Our police officer, with unexpected brutality, pins a little girl to the hard surface of the road, slamming her face painfully into the asphalt. The girl screams, and at the same moment, as if waking from a dream, he jerks his hand away and turns his head to see a man approaching. The officer instantly recognizes him and freezes in confusion. Standing before him is a famous martial artist and actor with a stern bearing. It is Steven Seagal himself. "What are you doing?" comes a low, calm voice, but one that contains a hidden threat. The girl, Seagal, is lying on the ground, unable to get up. Her hands are scraping the sand and gravel on the side of the road. To make matters worse, she is short and has no way to defend herself from a punch from a grown man. Officer Ray Dunning, a middle-aged white police officer, is a mixed bag. On the one hand, he has earned a certain amount of respect in the line of duty, but now, by all appearances, he has committed an unacceptable act. Wait, Ray Dunning stutters. Steven Seagal doesn't let him finish. He kneels down next to his daughter and lifts her by the shoulders, careful not to touch the cuts and bruises. The girl clings to her father in tears, clinging to his shoulder, trying to understand what happened. People are already starting to gather around. Cars in the next lane are slowly stopping, and worried drivers are getting out. They see the girl, who was forced to lie down on the road by a law enforcement officer. There is an uneasy tension in the air. "Explain yourself immediately," Steven says, trying to maintain a calm tone. Officer Ray Dunning swallows hard. Beads of sweat form on his face, even in the relatively warm weather. He wonders what he can do next. Part of him wants to drop the charges and save his career, but another part tells him it's too late to change anything. "I received a signal that a girl had run out onto the roadway where she shouldn't," the policeman justifies himself. "I assumed that perhaps she was disturbing the peace, but I didn't expect..." He pauses. Steven Seagal's gaze makes him look down. "You dared to shove a child's face into the asphalt," the girl's father says clearly. "That's criminal." The people standing around are whispering. Some are already trying to get closer to help the child. Others are cautiously watching the events unfold from across the road. A passing car stops, and a middle-aged woman gets out, apparently disturbed by what she has seen. She takes a handkerchief from her purse to wipe the blood from the girl's face. Steven thanks her with a short nod, trying not to take his eyes off Officer Dunning. "I promise we'll figure this out," Ray says quickly, realizing he's already in a catastrophic situation. "There may have been too much force, but we have to work together." Steven suddenly stands up and towers over Ray Dunning. His figure casts a small shadow on the policeman. People almost freeze, fearing that something big is about to happen. After all, the man with the famous surname Seagal is known for his ability to put many troublemakers in their place in films and sometimes in life. But instead of abrupt actions, Steven carefully presses his daughter to himself and says, "I'm taking her to the doctor, and you will be responsible for all the consequences of your actions." At this moment, the sound of a siren sounds. Another police car pulls up. Ray's partner, whose shift is almost over, gets out. Seeing the situation, the newly arrived officer looks confused. He has to figure out what to do. A crying girl, covered in bruises, is sitting on the ground. Her famous father is next to her, and in front of them is a policeman, shocked by his own actions, clearly exceeding the boundaries of his duty. The story is just beginning. Right where you watch us from, and subscribe to the channel. A woman who introduces herself as Lauren Seagal approaches Steven. She is the girl's aunt, short-haired, slender, yet broad-shouldered and strong. In addition, it is known that she used to serve in the armed forces and has experience in boxing. Seeing her niece injured, Lauren looks ready to intervene immediately. "Who dared?" she asks, scanning the crowd, turning a stern gaze on Ray Dunning. "Calm down," Steven asks his sister. "The most important thing now is helping the girl." People look at them with understanding. Some say they want the officer held accountable. Others try to call an ambulance, but Steven decides to immediately take his daughter to the nearest hospital himself. While Ray Dunning tries to explain himself to his partner, Steven and Lauren, carefully lifting Aya in their arms, walk to their car. Those gathered realize that they have witnessed something ugly, and the fact that Steven Seagal turned out to be the very person whose wrath anyone would try to avoid makes everything especially poignant. Deep scratches on the girl's face hurt the eyes of everyone who looks at her, and it's scary to think that just a couple of minutes ago, she simply crossed the street. This is how events unfold, not yet knowing how much they will stir up the entire city community and lead to a trial, meetings, investigations, and more. After all, sometimes one illegal action can cause a chain reaction affecting the entire system. Aya Seagal lies quietly in the backseat of Lauren's car. Steven sits next to her, trying to keep his daughter in the most comfortable position possible. The girl's pulse is still pounding in her ears, and tears are running down her cheeks, mixing with dried drops of blood. She wails from time to time, as if she doesn't understand why a stranger in uniform has punished her like this. "Sleep, baby," Steven whispers. "We'll be at the hospital soon." Lauren stares intently into the rearview mirror. Her face expresses extreme indignation. She does not believe that in the 20th century, something like this could happen to a defenseless child, and she does not understand how a policeman could act so cruelly and humiliatingly. In her soul, she seethes with the desire to immediately punish the culprit. "You know," she says quietly, without taking her eyes off the road, "if you hadn't stopped me, he would be lying there right now without getting up." Steven, putting his hand on the girl's shoulder, briefly looks away from the window. "I understand your feelings, but force will not help here. We must act within the law." Lauren bites her lip, feeling herself boiling with indignation. She squeezes the car's capabilities to the limit, trying to get to the hospital as quickly as possible. "Did you see the cut on her cheek?" she asks quietly, so as not to wake Aya. "It's not just a bruise. It looks like there's a deep cut by her eye." Steven carefully checks the damage and hugs his daughter, losing his composure. "Let's hope this doesn't leave any lasting marks. When this is all over, I'll make sure this man is held accountable for his actions." 15 minutes later, they pull into the courtyard of Wilmington General Hospital. A moment later, Lauren abruptly parks, turns off the engine, and gets out, helping Steven pull his daughter out of the car. Aya groans softly, wrapped in her father's jacket, and presses a small, clean, soft handkerchief to her face, given to them by an unknown woman on the road. In the emergency room, they are met by the nurse on duty, who, upon seeing the child's blood, immediately calls the doctor on duty. He resembles a short man of about 50, with glasses on the bridge of his nose and a knowing look. Seeing how scared the girl is, he immediately orders the nurse to prepare bandages and orders Aya to be taken to the procedure room. Steven asks permission for him and Lauren to stay close. "She's afraid," he explains. "We can't leave her alone." The doctor looks kindly. "Of course you will be with her, but please do not worry the child unnecessarily. She needs peace." They walk into a small room that looks more like a simple examination room. A few minutes later, the nurses wash the wound and treat the scratches. Aya winces in pain, but tries to hold on, knowing that her father is nearby and that she can trust him. The nurse, frowning, quietly remarks, "A small stitch will be required here to avoid severe deformation of the skin. The girl is still growing. It is important to treat it carefully so that there is no large scar left. Do what you have to do." Steven replies, looking at his daughter's face. "Despite everything that's happened, we have to keep her healthy." Lauren gently places her niece on the table and supports her left arm. The girl presses her head weakly into her father's palm as the doctor carefully disinfects the wound and begins his work. The muffled sound of hospital machines and quiet conversations outside the door can be heard nearby. For a moment, Aya closes her eyes so as not to look at the instrument being used to stitch up her wound. The operation is small, but requires attention and caution. Lauren looks reserved, but tears are visible in her eyes. Steven squeezes his daughter's hand, letting her know that he is there. "Hold on, my dear," he whispers quietly. When it's all over, the doctor manages to put in a neat stitch. The bandage hides the bruises and abrasions, leaving only a slight bloody residue on the bandage. Aya can finally take a deep breath. They let her sit for a while, check her pupil's reaction, measure her blood pressure. Then the nurse on duty hands her a piece of paper with recommendations for stitch care, advising her to see a surgeon in a few days. Lauren takes the paper to study it carefully. "Thank you," she tells the doctor. "We'll follow the instructions." The doctor looking at Aya. "The child has clearly gone through a terrible shock. I recommend a few days of extra rest, less movement in the sun, and heavy loads. And of course, try to avoid stressful situations." Stephen frowns. "And if I need to file a complaint against a police officer, will I be able to turn to you as a witness to what injuries were inflicted?" The doctor, rolling up the sleeves of his white coat. "It is my responsibility to record all injuries received in the hospital report. The documents will be stored in an alphabetical archive. If necessary, any law enforcement agencies can request them." Stephen nods politely. "So, you will help if I have to go to court? If a trial is necessary, then yes, but I hope you won't have to go through all this again. The girl should recover in a calm environment." Lauren sighs, sadly, with a wry smile. "Fate itself will show what we will have to go through." Leaving the office, they find themselves in a hallway filled with lost people, anxiously awaiting news of their loved ones. Stephen holds his daughter in his arms, feeling Aya tremble slightly. Lauren walks alongside, casting quick glances around. Finally, they emerge into the fresh air and walk toward the car. "We need to take her home," Stephen says, putting the girl in the back seat. "I'll prepare everything that's needed there," Lauren replies. "And you'll have to bother your lawyer consultants. And I'll call the police too, although I'm afraid that won't change anything." Stephen closes the door, sits down in the front and sits for a while staring into space. He understands that the situation is serious because we are talking about an attack on a child. Moreover, this crime must be followed by a harsh response. But he does not want revenge, but justice. He should think carefully about who to call first. Lauren looks at him straight. "Let's decide what to do next. I'll go to the police and ask them to officially record the appeal. I'll demand that this Dunning be brought to disciplinary responsibility. You'd better make sure that at least some public organization involved in protecting citizens knows about your case." "You're right," Stephen answers reluctantly but confidently. "But first, we'll bring Aya home. She needs some quiet time." Lauren starts the car. On the way, the girl falls asleep, her head on her father's lap. This time, the road takes longer because Lauren drives carefully, trying not to disturb the child's peace. They get to a small house where they are met on the porch by quiet, warm twilight. Inside, Lauren immediately lays out a blanket and pillow on the table so that Aya can rest. Stephen carefully carries his daughter, trying not to hurt her injured cheek and neck. The girl barely wakes up, only uttering a quiet moan in her sleep. "Sit next to her," Lauren whispers, "and I'll look up the phone numbers in the directory we need to call and file a report." Stephen, stroking Aya's hair, nods. He still feels a sharp pang of anger and pain in his chest, mixed with anxiety for his daughter's fate. Calling the police is only the first step in a long road of investigation, but as a father, he does not intend to back down. Lauren picks up the phone, looks through her address book, and slowly dials the station number. She speaks briefly, holding back her excitement, trying not to raise her voice. "I would like to report an incident. A child was injured while being detained by a police officer. Please register the complaint under the name of Officer Ray Dunning." There's some muttering on the other end of the line. Lauren explains the address and the nature of the complaint, then hangs up. She turns around to see Stephen gently adjusting the blanket around Aya's shoulders as she settles herself awkwardly on the living room couch. "What did they say?" Stephen asks. "They said they would take the statement and send someone to question me. I specifically added that this was a gross abuse of power," Lauren replies, sitting down on a chair. "We'll see how quickly they respond." Stephen purses his lips. He understands that the entire system can stand up for its employee, and everything will become much more complicated than it might seem at first glance. Someone higher up in the police force needs to understand that this is a serious case. Maybe contact the captain or someone in the district leadership. Lauren looks away. "I would go myself, but I won't leave Aya in such a state. Although I can ask a friend who worked as a legal advisor to help. He helped us a couple of times when we found ourselves in difficult situations." Stephen nods approvingly. Ask him to come and testify to the girl's condition. This shouldn't remain a detail that can be easily disputed. Let him take photographs. Write down our words. Right, Lauren says, standing up and picking up her phone again. It's best to document everything right away. She quickly dials another number. After the beeps, her voice becomes softer. Hello, sorry it's late. I need your help. Yes, about legal support. There is a problem with the child. My niece suffered. Yes, it is important. When can you come? She arranges a visit later this evening. After a short conversation, she hangs up. He will be here soon. He asked if the press should be involved, but I don't want to trust the press yet. We don't know how everything will turn out. Stephen sits down next to Aya and whispers softly, stroking her hand. When Uncle comes, we'll talk to him calmly. Everything will be fine. Aya opens her eyes and looks at her father. Confusion is evident in them. Why did this man hit me? I didn't do anything bad. Stephen goes quiet, not wanting to lie to the child. He is terrified that the girl might lose some of her trust in the people in uniform. He cannot find the right words to fully explain the child's grief. Finally, he says, sometimes people make mistakes and are cruel for no reason, but that doesn't mean everyone is like that. I promise there is truth. We will find it, and good people will help us. Aya tries to nod but barely lifts her head. Lauren passes the sofa again, adjusting the edge of the blanket on the girl's legs as if trying to warm her niece with her care. Then she moves to the kitchen and pours cool water into a small pitcher, bringing a couple of clean glasses into the living room. Be patient, she says in a calm tone. We need to wait until our lawyer friend arrives. Then we'll think about what to do next. Outside the windows, the twilight thickens. The lights of the street lamps gradually illuminate the small courtyard. Silence settles in the house, which is only occasionally broken by the distant sounds of cars on the neighboring street. It seems as if the whole world has plunged into a thoughtful silence after what happened during the day. Stephen tries to distract Aya with a story about a recent trip they took to the coast and watched the sunset. The girl listens absent-mindedly, her eyelids growing heavy, but she seems happy with this simple conversation, helping to forget the recent insult. Do you remember how the birds flew over the water? Stephen says quietly. You laughed when the waves crashed on the rocks. I remember how you ran along the beach. Aya doesn't answer, but a faint smile appears on her lips. Lauren gently touches her brother's shoulder. I was there that day too. It's good that we at least have these memories. A little later, the doorbell rings. Lauren shudders, leaves the glass on the table and goes to open it. A squat man in a neat suit appears on the threshold, with a folder under his arm. He introduces himself. My name is Greg. It's good to see you, despite the circumstances. Lauren briefly recounts the events of the day, naming the officer. Greg frowns darkly, making quick notes on his notepad as he walks into the living room, noticing Aya quietly on the couch. Let me take a look, he says carefully. This is a very important moment. All injuries must be officially recorded. Stephen nods in agreement, helping the girl to her feet. Greg sits down in the chair opposite, examines the bandage and dressing that was applied at the hospital, takes several photos with a small amateur camera that looks rather modest. He explains each photo in a loud and clear voice to emphasize the purpose, to document evidence. Thank you for coming so quickly, Lauren says. Your professional help is important to me. You know how to file a claim correctly and how to resist possible pressure from law enforcement agencies. Greg puts his hand to his chin. This is a difficult situation, but we can act consistently. First, we will file a complaint. Then, we will involve public organizations so that the case does not die down. And during the investigation, we will insist on strict punishment. After all, the child suffered innocently. Stephen looks at him. I don't want to turn everything into a groundless scandal. I need justice, and I'm sure that it should be within the boundaries of the law. I understand, Greg replies. As soon as we draw up a written statement, I'll take it to the address. Then, I'll contact my acquaintances in the district prosecutor's office so that, if necessary, they can be involved in monitoring the progress of the case. Aya, tired of waiting for the conversation to end, closes her eyes. She falls into a half sleep again. apparently trying to escape the suffocating anxiety. Stephen notices that her fingers are shaking and quietly covers them with his palm. Greg, having prepared several sheets of paper, begins dictating the wording to Lauren, who quickly writes it down with a fountain pen. They decide that all the circumstances need to be mentioned: the sudden stop on the road, the rudeness of the officer, the lack of grounds for the use of force, the consequences of the blow. While the adults are busy filing a complaint, Aya dozes, occasionally twitching, as if remembering how her face was pressed against a hard surface. Stephen notices tears on the girl's eyelashes, but does not disturb her. It is enough that she lies in warmth and silence. With the main lines of the statement ready, Greg asks for a brief list of all the witnesses. Lauren writes down the names of random eyewitnesses she remembers and also clarifies that there may be others who saw everything from their cars. Greg promises to find out if there are any CCTV cameras nearby. Although this is not the city center, some intersections are equipped with video surveillance devices. "Thank you," Lauren says quietly. "I'll call when I hear anything new." Greg gathers the papers, carefully placing them in a folder. Before heading to the threshold, he turns to Stephen. "Hold on. Don't fall for provocations. I have no doubt that some will try to hush up the incident, but we won't let it slide." Stephen extends his hand in gratitude. "We couldn't have done it alone. I'm glad you're here." Greg leaves and the sudden silence falls again. Lauren sits down tiredly on the couch, holding Aya's hand. The girl breathes quietly, and she looks calmer. Stephen goes out onto the porch to catch his breath. The night sky above, individual stars twinkle in it. Around you can barely hear the sounds of the distant highway and the rustle of a light wind. Stephen thinks about the future. He may have to face the reluctance of some police officers to reveal the truth, or even outright resistance. But he knows that the obvious facts speak for him. A girl who suffered, with justified medical reports, and he is firmly convinced that justice must prevail. The next morning, Lauren wakes up to the sound of dishes rattling in the kitchen. She gets up, realizing that Stephen is already up and probably busy trying to cook something for Aya. Her gaze falls on the sofa. The girl is still asleep under a thick blanket, holding a bandage to her cheek. Lauren carefully walks past, checks to see if her niece is awake, and heads into the kitchen. There, Stephen is thoughtfully stirring oatmeal in a small saucepan. He looks tired, but calm. Hearing his sister's footsteps, he turns around. "Good morning. I thought I could at least take care of her breakfast a little. Yesterday was exhausting for all of us." Lauren nods and sits down. She notices that Stephen has a deep line above his right eyebrow, a clear sign of anxiety. They are silent for a few seconds, and then the woman says, "We probably should go to the station in person to make sure the statement was registered. I called yesterday, but no one came to see us. Maybe they decided not to hurry." Stephen sighs, putting down his spoon. "I am also inclined to this. Ideally, you should be present when the report is being drawn up so that no one can distort anything. I want everything to be crystal clear. The child suffered as a result of the officer's actions." "We'll go together," Lauren finishes firmly. "But first, we'll wait until Aya wakes up. We'll see how she feels. If she has trouble walking, we'll have to leave her at home with someone." At that moment, as if in response to their words, a quiet voice of a girl is heard from the living room. Lauren immediately gets up and leaves the kitchen. Stephen follows her. Aya is sitting on the couch, her fingers wrapped around the edge of the blanket. It is clearly difficult for her to smile after everything that has happened, but she understands that her family is nearby. "Good morning, sunshine." Lauren greets her quietly, sitting down next to her and touching her forehead with her palm to check for a fever. "How are you?" Aya shrugs and touches the bandage on her face. The touch makes her wince. It hurts a little, but not as much as it did yesterday. Stephen leans over, brushing a strand of hair from his daughter's face. "I made some porridge. I'll fill your plate now. Do you want to have breakfast here or go to the kitchen?" "We can do it here," Aya answers in a low voice. "It's hard for me to get up yet. I'm a little dizzy." Lauren gently helps the girl to sit up, putting an extra pillow so that she can lean more comfortably against the back of the sofa. Stephen goes into the kitchen and soon returns with a bowl of warm porridge and a cup of warm water. He carefully places them on a small nightstand near the sofa. Aya takes a spoon and tentatively tries a few spoonfuls. Lauren and Stephen sit down next to her, keeping an eye on her. For a moment, the room is quiet. Then the girl pauses and asks, "Dad, are you going to argue with this policeman?" Stephen covers her hand with his palm. "I don't want to quarrel with him. I want to achieve justice. Your aunt and I are going to the police station now. We'll file a complaint. This is necessary so that something like this never happens to you or the other guys again." Aya looks down sadly. "It's a shame it all turned out this way. I didn't do anything bad. I was just walking down the street." Lauren bows her head and shakes it from side to side. "It happens. Not all people in uniform treat others fairly, but we will not allow them to be relieved of responsibility." Stephen raises his eyebrows. "Maybe we should invite our neighbor to look after Aya. Or let the girl go with us, but sit in the car. It's hard to leave her alone after everything." "I'd rather stay home," Aya intervenes in a trembling voice. "I don't want to see the policeman back." "Then let's call Mrs. Delgado," Lauren decides. "She's always been very attentive to us. I think she'll agree to stay with Aya for a while." That's how they agree, and soon they invite an elderly neighbor who lives 2 houses away. Short and kind-looking, Mrs. Delgado is happy to help. She trusts the Seagal family enough and has accompanied Aya to school on several occasions when Lauren and Stephen were busy. After making sure the girl is comfortable and explaining that they only need to periodically check on the child's well-being, Lauren and Stephen head to the car. The drive to the police station is silent. Stephen stares ahead, mentally rehearsing what he will say to the officers. Lauren drives with concentration, trying not to miss the right turn. They turn onto a small street where the police station is located. The scale of the building is not particularly awe-inspiring, an inconspicuous rectangle of grayish stone with narrow windows. They park in the visitors' parking lot and look around. The entrance to the site looks simple, just a sign with the name of the area and a stand chauffeur inside the hall. They go inside. Behind the counter, a middle-aged clerk looks up and smiles pleasantly. "Good afternoon. How can I help you?" Lauren explains matter-of-factly. "We came to complain about the officer. We already left a phone message, but we need to make sure that our words will be officially entered into the register." Clerk asks again, "Which specific officer is being complained about?" Stephen takes a piece of paper out of his pocket with the details written down. "Officer Ray Dunning. Yesterday, around noon, he used brute force on our niece." Clark looks at the computer. In the room, you can hear something crackling in the old printer. He prints a few papers, takes them out, and holds them out. "Please fill out these forms, sign, and provide all details. We will then forward them to your district internal affairs officer. This is standard procedure." Stephen and Lauren walk to a table with a few plastic chairs and pens. They sit down and patiently fill out the fields. Personal details, contact information, a brief description of the incident. The sheet of paper quickly fills up with neat lines. Lauren towards clearly, without unnecessary emotions, simply recording the facts. When they return to the counter, the clerk carefully looks through the sheets, underlines something with a green pencil. "Please wait a minute. I will call one of the employees who is responsible for receiving applications." They point to a short corridor with seats along the walls. Stephen and Lauren sit down, exchange quick glances. Anxiety smolders inside them. Will the process be delayed? Will they hold up the issue where the officer is protected by the system? But for now, there is no other go-ways other than following formal procedures. 5 minutes later, a woman in a sergeant's uniform appears, her badge reading Sergeant Maria Soto. Her figure is short, and her voice seems confident, without a hint of hesitation. "Good afternoon. My name is Maria Soto. I work on internal audits. I understand that you have come with a complaint." Lauren and Stephen stand up. Lauren first looks at her interlocutor. "Yes, we want to file a formal case against Officer Ray Dunning. He seriously injured our niece, a child of 9. We have already left a message on the phone and have now filled out the forms." Soto invites them into a small room with a table, 2 chairs for visitors, and a file cabinet. She gestures for them to sit down. "Tell me everything in order. I want to hear all the details, and then we will check what was stated in the documents." Stephen recounts in detail how Ray Dunning grabbed the girl from the roadway for no apparent reason, physically assaulting her by pushing her face into a hard surface. Lauren picks up the story, recalling how they took Aya to the hospital to have her wound stitched up. Soto listens, jotting down notes. "I understand. Your statement is accepted," she says after Lauren finishes. "We'll be interviewing Officer Dunning soon, looking into witnesses, reviewing medical reports. I promise it will be looked into." Lauren narrows her eyes. "Do you understand that we are talking about a child and a gross violation of service instructions? And I hope that there will be no attempts to hide the truth." Soto looks at her calmly. "I am not interested in making any concessions to the offender if he is really guilty. My job is to supervise discipline. I can say, if the evidence confirms that the officer acted against the regulations, he will face serious consequences." Stephen grips the arm of his chair. "Thank you. We just want justice. No revenge, but this can't go unpunished. The girl will have a scar on her face. It's a constant reminder for her." Soto looks away and sighs. "I understand your concern. Leave your phone numbers, address. We will contact you when additional information is needed. We will try to conduct an investigation as soon as possible." Lauren and Stephen stand up and shake the sergeant's hand. They see that Soto, despite her reserved tone, seems focused and perhaps objective. They feel a tiny spark of hope that there are people who are not willing to stand up for abuse. "Thank you," Lauren says as she leaves. "We'll wait for news." They walk out of the lot and stop on the street. The sun breaks through the clouds, flooding the concrete porch with light. Stephen takes a deep breath and says, "Well, we've taken the first step. Now the main thing is not to waste time. We must control the progress of the case so that everything does not remain only on paper." Lauren nods in agreement. "Let's go back to the house and check on Aya. Then I think we need to think about whether it's worth contacting psychologists we know to help the girl get through the stress." They walk to the car and notice a man in uniform standing at a distance. He seems to be trying to see something. Stephen catches his eye briefly, but he turns away, as if not wanting to engage in conversation. Lauren shrugs and gets behind the wheel. The engine revs up smoothly, is being driven, and they leave the police building. Lauren carefully turns onto the side street that leads to their home. The car slides along the asphalt, and both of their hearts are heavy with thoughts of the upcoming ordeal. Stephen keeps looking out the window, imagining again and again how Officer Ray Dunning used brute forsato his daughter. All this makes him shrink inside, although outwardly he remains calm. "Do you think the police department is really going to do anything?" Lauren asks as they stop at a traffic light. Stephen sighs briefly. "It's hard to say. I want to believe that Sergeant Soto is being honest, but we have to keep our cool and remind them of ourselves if we see signs of a delay." They park near their yard. Notice that on the porch, the short figure of Mrs. Delgado is talking to Aya. The girl, apparently, decided to go out for a short while for some fresh air. At the sight of the car, she is happy but does not run towards it, being cautious. Lauren and Stephen get out of the car and go up the steps. "How are you, baby?" Lauren asks, running her hand through her niece's hair. "Everything okay?" Aya looks up at her, trying to smile. "I'm fine. Had a little chat with Mrs. Delgado. She was telling me about her childhood on a farm, was interested in how they looked after the animals." Stephen thanks his elderly neighbor for her concern. "We appreciate your help. It would be difficult for us without you." Mrs. Delgado waves it off. "Oh, no problem. I'm always ready to look after the girl. She's so sweet, elderly." The woman goes into her room. Stephen and Lauren enter the house with Aya. The girl rubs her neck a couple of times, clearly still feeling the tension. Lauren notices this gesture. "Are you still in pain?" Aya nods. "My arm went a little numb when I leaned on the railing." Lauren places her palm on her niece's forehead, checking for a fever. "Please let me know if you feel worse. We want to be there today and take you back to the doctor if necessary." Stephen gently places his hand on his daughter's elbow. "You are very smart. Go sit on the sofa if you're tired. Then tell me if you want to take a little walk around the yard." Aya obediently enters the living room and sits down on the sofa. Watching her carefully hold her hand to her cheek, Lauren understands. The wound still stings, and the thin stitch can cause pain. The girl says nothing about the pain, tries to hold on. I would suggest giving her something for inflammation, Lauren says quietly to Stephen. The doctor said that you can use mild remedies to reduce swelling. Stephen agrees, going into the next room to get the first aid kit. On the way, he can't help but think that their life will change with each passing day. The house that seemed like a reliable fortress is now filled with fear, but he clenches his fists, pushing away these dark feelings. When he returns to the living room, Aya is already looking at him, waiting for what his father has brought. Take this, Stephen says, handing her a pill with water. It'll make you feel better. Girl obediently swallows the medicine, thanks. Stephen and Lauren exchange anxious glances, but try not to show too much concern. Suddenly, the phone rings. Lauren goes to the device, picks up the receiver. Yes, I'm listening. Yes, it's me. Wait, how did this happen? Her face changes, and there's a sharp note in her voice. I understand. Okay, we'll be there. Stephen is wary. What's happened? Lauren hangs up. The police station called. It looks like Officer Dunning has been suspended pending an investigation, but now we're being called to the captain's office. They're asking us to come in, saying they need more information. I wonder what the questions are. Aya, having caught the topic of the conversation, rises. To the police again. Lauren turns around with a soft look. We'll both have to go. We won't drag you along this time. You'll be with us in spirit. We'll try not to stay there long. Stephen walks up to his daughter, sits down next to her, and puts his arm around her shoulders. We'll find out everything we can. Then we'll get right back to you. In the meantime, Mrs. Delgado will be on duty again, if that's okay with you. Aya shakes her head sadly. Okay, I'll stay at home. Lauren goes to the phone to call her neighbor again, and Stephen writes a short note about what they need to clarify with the captain. What questions exactly arose, why the call came so suddenly, whether there will be any pressure. Mrs. Delgado's elderly voice sounds apologetic, but she confirms her readiness to come again when needed. Lauren briefly thanks her and ends the call. We're getting ready, she says, hanging up. We better not delay, or they'll think we don't want to cooperate. While Lauren throws on a light jacket, Stephen glances around the room, checking that everything is arranged for the girl's convenience. He hands her the TV remote so that she can while away the time with something unobtrusive. Then they go out together, and a few minutes later, Mrs. Delgado appears. Aya remains in the living room under her kind supervision. Road to the station is not easy again. There is a tense silence in the salon, as if all the mental energy is spent on internal experiences. Lauren wonders if they are trying to somehow force them to change their testimony. Stephen, frowning, thinks on how many it makes sense to continue cooperation because they already see that it is not so easy to fight the system. On they go up to the second floor where the captain's office is located. A young employee meets them in the reception area and asks them to wait. Lauren and Stephen sit down in a narrow corridor on a bench next to a closed door with a sign saying, Captain Riley. Muffled voices can be heard on the other side. Finally, the door opens slightly and Sergeant Maria Soto comes out. Glad you came. Come in. The captain is ready to talk to you. They enter a spacious but not particularly luxurious room. A strong man of about 50 with gray temples and a thoughtful look sits at a desk. He carefully straightens up. Good afternoon. I am Captain Riley. Please have a seat. Lauren pulls up a chair and sits down. Stephen remains standing for a few seconds, then sits down next to his sister. Maria Soto closes the door and takes a seat to the side, clasping her hands on her knees. The captain takes several sheets of paper from a folder and glances through them. So, from what I have heard, there was an incident where your child was injured. Sergeant Soto is currently conducting a preliminary investigation, but I have some additional questions. Please answer them. Stephen narrows his eyes slightly. We are ready to cooperate if it leads to a fair result. Captain looks at Lauren for a moment. Officer Dunning stated that the girl allegedly jumped in front of cars and threw rocks when he tried to protect her. He mentioned that she fell on her own and that she hit the ground after she had escaped from his grasp. What? Lauren can't hold back her indignation. That's a blatant lie. My niece has never done anything like that. Captain clears his throat. Please speak calmly. We are just sorting out the inconsistencies here. I want to understand what actually happened because now we have two contradictory statements. Stephen stands up, speaking in a firmer voice. The opposite statement. There are witnesses who saw him drive past, stop abruptly, grab the girl and slam her face into the pavement. My daughter has a stitch, and the hospital has recorded injuries. Does anyone really think that a child would hurt himself like that? Deformed? Captain nervously taps his pen on the table. We also need eyewitness testimony. So far, only some of the eyewitnesses have come forward, but few have written down their words. We would also like to know who else might have seen this. Lauren purses her lips. If necessary, we will provide names that we remember. We also have papers from the hospital confirming the level of injury. Soto nods quietly. I asked the medical institution to send a report. Not all the documents have arrived yet. Captain shifts papers. You see, the procedure is that we have to compare your version with his version. Words are not enough. We need corroboration. Officer Dunning has the right to defend himself, and he stated that the child was behaving inappropriately. However, given the severity of the injury, we do not can brush aside your accusations. Therefore, I want to assure you, we will take a calm, objective position. If the officer is found guilty, he will be punished. Stephen replies sullenly, I hope these are not empty words. Captain sighs quietly. I understand your concerns. Our job is not to hush this up, but to find out what was going on at that moment. I have already suspended Dunning from street duty until the investigation is completed. If it is confirmed that he violated service ethics, he will face disciplinary action, ANI, and possibly even more serious consequences. Lauren looks closely at the captain's face. We appreciate that you at least suspended him so that he does not continue his dangerous practice, but we want a fair trial, not a formal one. Captain lowers his head slightly. Sergeant Soto is aware we are required to operate within the law. However, be prepared for the possibility of being called in for questioning, questions from other department employees. Don't be surprised if someone tries to challenge your words. Stephen clenches his fist resolutely. We, for our part, will do everything to ensure that the truth comes out. And we have a lawyer who is also following the case. That's your right, the captain says, putting the papers away in a folder. I thank you for your time. I believe this concludes our conversation. Lauren turns to Soto. When will the next steps be? I'll get back to you, the sergeant replies briefly. I'll try to give you any details as soon as I have any new information. They leave the office feeling somewhat relieved, although questions remain. On the one hand, the captain speaks evenly and shows no interest in hiding details. On the other, the story Dunning concocted is outrageous, and it is not known who the system will support in the end. On at the landing, Lauren and Stephen stop. He can't get away with it, says Lauren. There are signs of beatings, a hospital report. Let him make up 100 lies, the truth will come out anyway. Stephen nods in agreement. They walk down the steps, back out onto the street where they park the car and quietly walk toward their house, wondering what the next stage of the fight will be. By the way back, Lauren keeps glancing back in the mirror as if expecting that someone might be watching them. Stephen notices her anxiety. You are driving very carefully. Do you think that someone is deliberately following us? I'm not sure, she says dryly, turning away from the mirror. But it seemed to me that one car was hanging around a little too long. Stephen exhales slowly. If someone tries to intimidate us, it is useless. We will not retreat. Road, however, remains calm. The cars around look ordinary. Ordinary city dwellers returning from business, carrying bags, talking in their salons. No one stands out. Lauren reduces the internal tension, although she continues to reluctantly glance back. As they turn towards home, the sun begins to set, painting the sky in light orange-pink tones. Mrs. Delgado greets them on the porch with a friendly look. She rises from her chair when she sees Lauren and Stephen returning. How did it go? Lauren throws up her hands wearily. They accept our complaint. The investigation seems to be underway, but we feel that everything could be very complicated. Stephen thanks his neighbor. Thanks for watching, Aya. How is she? The girl got up and walked around the yard a bit. She said that the wound near her eye hurt a little, but it seemed bearable. She ate carefully and drank warm tea. Stephen takes some change out of his pocket, hoping to somehow thank Mrs. Delgado, but she gently declines. What are you saying? I didn't do anything like that. It's not hard for me to babysit. She says goodbye and goes to his room. Stephen and Lauren go inside the house. Aya is resting in the living room, looking at an open book. When her loved ones appear, she raises her head and quietly says, "You haven't come for a long time." Lauren walks over and presses her shoulder to her niece. "Sorry, but I hope everything will only get better now, although there is still some litigation to come. How is your cheek?" Aya carefully touches the bandage with his fingers. "It stings a little, but I can bear it." Stephen swallows the lump in his throat. It pains him to see a child forced to endure the consequences of someone else's cruelty. He sits down opposite and tries to say something encouraging. "We'll be going to the doctor for a follow-up examination very soon. Now let me get you some water or tea if you want." Girl blinks and smiles slightly. "You can have warm tea." Lauren gets up and heads to the kitchen. The silence becomes more noticeable with each passing moment as the water boils. Stephen notices that there is a tension in the house after the incident, as if everyone is afraid to say anything too much so as not to disturb the feelings of others. But silence is also burdensome. Soon Lauren returns with a mug of aromatic tea, hands it to Aya, helping her hold it carefully in her hands. The girl sips the drink. Despite the weak smile on her face, inside she is clearly unhappy, and Lauren can see it. "Don't be sad. We will stop this man. Everyone has the right to walk down the street without fear, be it a child or an adult." Aya looks out the window. "And he won't come here again?" Stephen answers calmly. "I don't think so. He's been suspended for now. He probably won't be patrolling the streets, but we have to be prepared for anything." Pair minutes pass in leisurely conversation. Then Aya dozes off, curled up on the couch. Lauren sits down next to her, puts a soft pillow under her head, and covers her even more tightly with a blanket. Stephen, seeing that the girl has relaxed, gestures that he and Lauren need to talk alone. They go into the kitchen and quietly close the door. "Let's invite a doctor to her home," Stephen suggests. "I don't like that she complains of pain so often." "Agreed. Better to be on the safe side," Lauren responds. "I'll call the clinic. Maybe someone can make a house call, or at least come after the daytime appointment." Stephen glances out the window, where the evening haze is already beginning to thicken. "Somehow I feel that this is just the beginning. We need to prepare for possible summonses to the police or even to court." Lauren nods briefly. "Greg's lawyer has promised to be in touch. Hopefully, he can support us when needed. For now, we'll stay home as long as we can." They agree that Lauren will handle the medical consultations, and Stephen will make inquiries about the local civil rights advocates who usually provide legal and public support in such matters. Having made a small plan of action, they go back to Aya. Girl does not sleep, although he slightly closes his eyes. "I heard you were going to invite someone. Strangers again?" Lauren squats down next to him. "This is the doctor who will help you if complications arise. You never know. You need to check how the suture is healing." Aya slowly places her hand on her shoulder. "Okay. I don't want to go anywhere anymore. It's better for the doctor to come here himself." Stephen sinks onto the couch. "We'll do everything calmly, without rushing. Now just try to rest." At night, Aya is fast asleep, but Lauren is awake most of the time. Going to the window every now and then, she thinks she hears suspicious footsteps outside. Once she mistakes the creaking of a branch in the wind for someone's footsteps, runs to the window and peers into the darkness. But none. There are no people near the house. Perhaps the anxiety lives not outside, but in her own mind. In the morning, the sun appears, softly illuminating the yard. Stephen, waking up, immediately checks his phone. He hopes for a response from the protective organization to which he sent a message the day before. However, the line is silent. Lauren is dozing in a chair, placing a narrow pillow under her head. Aya, on the contrary, has refreshed herself somewhat, although she is still clutching her cheek. She asks her father in a quiet voice, Will the doctor come today? Yes, we agreed on the second half of the day. He will examine the wound and tell if everything is okay. In confirmation of his words is heard by a knock on the door. Stephen gets up and goes to open it. In front of him is a man of about 40 in a simple medical gown but without unnecessary fuss. He introduces himself as Dr. Escobar and asks what room the child is in. Stephen takes him to Aya. Lauren wakes up and sleepily rubs her eyes as she greets the doctor. He sits down next to the sofa, takes a small bag off his shoulder, and takes out several instruments. He examines the suture, carefully removing a small bandage. Here you need to treat it again. The wound is healing, but there is redness. You will have to watch for a few more days so that inflammation does not occur. If the pain increases, do not delay. Go to the hospital immediately. Aya waits patiently while the doctor dabs the area with a bandage and a special solution. The doctor treats the girl with noticeable care, saying, "Good for you for not being afraid. Such damage takes time, and then the seam will fade over time." Stephen looks at Escobar. "Please tell me, could this leave her with a permanent scar? There may be a small mark left, but it is difficult to say how noticeable it will be. Children often have a good ability to regenerate," the doctor answers, putting the instruments back in the bag. "The main thing is not to touch or tear off the crusts. I will prescribe an ointment to speed up eye healing. Apply twice daily." Lauren walks the doctor to the door, politely pays for the visit. Then she returns to the living room where Aya tries not to touch the bandage but occasionally touches the tip with her fingers. Lauren fixes her hair. Everything will be fine. Soon the phone rings. Stephen picks it up and hears the familiar voice of Lawyer Greg. "I wanted to ask if there was any new news from the station. And also, I heard rumors. It seems Dunning is trying to put most of the blame on the girl, claiming that he was protecting her from passing cars. Allegedly, she was spinning around on the road, not listening to orders." Stephen shakes his head as he answers into the phone. "This is a lie. Aya did nothing of the sort. We have already informed the captain that we have witnesses." Greg continues, "You are required to be fully prepared to refute any fabrications. If necessary, I can arrange a meeting with other parents who know Aya and can confirm that she is a calm child. This can also affect the overall picture. Negative character heresy, the girl's lawyers on the officer's side will hardly be able to seriously present it then." Stephen ponders. "Yes, maybe we should gather people who have communicated with Aya, but I don't know yet whether we should take such steps ahead of time." On the other end of the line, Greg insists, "I suggest not to rush, but not to drag it out either. Consult with Lauren. If you agree, we will prepare a group of witnesses who will be able to testify about the girl's good behavior." Stephen looks towards the couch, where Aya sits up and looks at his father curiously. "I'll think about it. Thanks for the advice. Keep us updated." Having put the phone, he tells Lauren everything. She listens attentively. It seems that Ray Dunning is not going to admit guilt. He will dodge in any way. It is important for him to keep his job. Maybe he is trying to find an excuse, like he saved a child. Stephen shakes his head. "It's mean, but we have factual evidence." Let him try to wriggle out of it when he has medical documents in hand. Besides, people on the road saw what happened. Lauren is silent for a minute, then interjects. "However, we will have to be persistent. Sometimes even obvious evidence gets lost if someone actively puts pressure on the police. They decide to wait for official news from Sergeant Soto before taking further action. But they are determined not to let their family get dragged into this unfortunate turn of events." In the evening, Aya feels a little better, only occasionally wincing in pain when turning her head. Lauren slams the refrigerator door and says, "I'll be heating up dinner in a few minutes. Don't you feel like grabbing a bite right now?" Girl responds embarrassedly, "Maybe a little later. I don't want to yet." Stephen goes out onto the porch, listening to the street noises. The sky is gradually covered by a soft darkness, and in the distance he can hear the occasional car driving along the nearby road. The neighbor's dog barks, as if anticipating strangers' footsteps, but apparently there are no strangers. He poisons into the darkness, then slowly returns to the house. The night promises to be quiet. he notes in a dry tone. Lauren shrugs slightly in response. An alienated atmosphere of unkind thoughts hangs in the air. They all know that the peace will not be permanent. What awaits them next are interrogations, formalities, and most likely a meeting with Ray Dunning under more unpleasant circumstances. "I'll call the medical facility tomorrow," Lauren says. "They might have official papers that I can get my hands on. I have a feeling that information sometimes gets lost if you don't remind them in time." Stephen nods in agreement and says, looking at the girl's closed eyes, "We must go this way to the end." On the next morning, Lauren gets on the phone first thing and starts calling several organizations that she thinks might be able to support families who have been abused by government officials. She carefully writes down the names and numbers in a long-kept notebook where she once wrote down work contacts. While she fills in the lines, Stephen stands by the window, peering into the small garden in front of the house. "Found anyone?" he asks in a low voice, trying not to wake Aya, who is still sleeping in the living room. Lauren closes her notebook and slowly shakes her head. "So far, I have only reached one community that provides legal assistance to citizens, but they said that they have a lot of work and that we will have to leave a request and wait for a response, although they promise that in case of serious violations we will not be left without attention." Stephen glances around the room, which is dimly lit by the drawn curtains. "I hope at least someone will listen to our call. Well, let's see what this day brings us." A little bit later, Aya wakes up and, wincing, touches the bandage on her face. A shadow of pain passes in her eyes. Lauren approaches her and asks, "How are you feeling?" Girl quietly answers, "It's fine. It wasn't very comfortable to sleep, but the pain has already become quieter. Thank you for applying the ointment." Stephen brings her some warm tea. The girl slowly takes a few sips and asks timidly, "Will I be able to go outside? I want to walk around the yard." Lauren and Stephen exchange a glance. Finally, Lauren replies, "Of course you can, but not for long and close to home, so as not to overexert yourself. Go get some fresh air, and I'll be there in 5 minutes." Aya smiles weakly and carefully, holding the bandage, heads towards the door. Stephen watches her, noticing how she tries to appear cheerful, although until recently, all she did was lie down, distancing herself from everyone. "I hope the fresh air will help her," Stephen says quietly to his sister. "Let her get away from her heavy thoughts." Lauren wipes her hands on a towel and looks around the table where the flyers and business cards are. "Then I want to go and buy some groceries and find out if there have been any new newspaper reports about police brutality. But the main thing is not to go too far. Suddenly, we will be suspected of blowing the scandal out of proportion." Stephen lowers his chin. "I think the press will soon be interested anyway if the matter becomes official. We can't hide what happened." Truco. A few minutes later, Lauren goes out onto the porch and sees Aya walking around the house, trying not to bend over or make any sudden movements. The girl stops near a small flower bed with wilting flowers, touches one of the petals with her finger, and sighs. Lauren comes closer. "Want to get some air? Good thing you got some sleep. Maybe you want to take a walk along the path that leads to the gate? I'm nearby." Aya shrugs vaguely. "Yes, I can. I just don't want anyone else to see me with a bandage." Lauren squeezes her hand understandingly. "It's not your fault, and we're here for you. Besides, once you get better, we'll take the bandage off and everything will be fine." They slowly walk around the house. The sun is not yet too high, so the air is quite fresh and caresses the skin with a light warmth. Aya occasionally looks curiously at the rare passers-by behind the fence, but tries to keep her face half hidden. Laura notices that the girl wants to feel relatively safe and not the object of close attention. Suddenly, a small dog runs up to them, jumping out of the neighboring yard. It wags its tail cheerfully, stretches its muzzle towards Aya as if trying to persuade her to play. The girl automatically moves away, but seeing the funny muzzle, she involuntarily smiles. "Hello," she says weakly. Lauren gently pats the dog behind the ear. "She's the neighbor's pet, don't be afraid. I remember her name. I think it was Pippi." Doggy whines, not taking his shining eyes away, but after a moment he gets distracted and runs on about his business. Aya relaxes a little. Good, animals don't do evil unless you hurt them. Lauren looks at her niece and quietly says, True, people sometimes make mistakes, but dogs are guided by a simple desire to be close. They return to the house and see Stephen standing at the gate talking to someone on the phone. His face is tense. When Lauren and Aya come closer, he ends the conversation and turns to them. Greg called. He said that new information had come in. The police department had already started taking statements from some of the witnesses who were on the road at the time. They said that people actually confirmed that they saw the officer pin the child to the earth without any apparent need. Aya looks down. Lauren sighs in relief. Thank God. That means the truth won't be hidden so easily. Stephen sounds cautious. Yes, but Greg said Dunning doesn't seem to be going along with the charges. He refuses to admit guilt and has hired a lawyer to fight for him. Aya, having heard this, remains silent. Lauren sees that the child is frightened by any thought of talking to strangers, so she tries to calm her down. Don't worry about anything for now. The main thing is to get better. Let the adults deal with their own difficult issues. At this moment, a tall man with a folder in his hands comes to the gate. Stephen notices him first. Who is this? Stranger, seeing that he has managed to attract attention, raises his hand in a conciliatory gesture. Excuse me, I'm looking for a member of the Seagal family. I'm Brian, a reporter for the local paper. I've been told you had a run-in with the police and I'd like to get some clarification. Lauren exchanges a quick glance with her brother. They are both annoyed that unfamiliar journalists have already started to appear since Aya is still in shock. We're not commenting on this at this time, Stephen says coldly, holding the gate. Sorry, we have a child who needs to recover. Reporter, however, does not go away. I understand this may be a sensitive topic, but believe me, these stories are important to society. I would like to help shed light on the issue to draw attention to abuses of power. I am ready to hear your point of view if you deem it necessary. Lauren clenches her fists, remembering her lawyer's request that she not rush into public statements. She decides not to be too blunt, but makes it clear that she has no plans to speak out yet. Sorry, we have no desire to discuss anything. You will be able to understand how difficult it is for a child to hear once again about what happened. Reporter, he nods his head understandingly. Then, let me leave my business card. If you decide that you still need to tell the public, call the editorial office. I will do material about various similar cases so that people know the truth. Stephen takes the extended business card and says briefly, I can't promise we'll call you, but thank you. All the best. Heslams the gate and turns to see Aya staring at the stranger through the metal bars. The reporter walks away slowly, taking in the layout of the house and yard, apparently memorizing details for a possible story. Lauren leads Aya into the house, worried that the girl might be disturbed by each such visit. Having laid down the child on the sofa, Lauren sits down next to him. Don't think about this person. You don't have to talk to anyone until you're ready. There are already different people gathering information, but let the lawyers sort it out. Our business is your health. Aya nods, clutching the edges of the blanket. Stephen whispers quietly to Lauren, suggesting that they invite a woman they know who used to work as a school psychologist to see the girl today. Perhaps the child needs not only a doctor, but also a calm conversation with someone who knows how to talk with children who have experienced trauma. Just so she can talk, says Stephen. Talk about her fears. She needs someone other than us who can listen. Lauren doubts. I understand, but I don't want to rush the child either. Maybe she's not ready to talk about everything again. Stephen covers his sister's hand with his palm. Let's take a risk. Let's ask the psychologist to come and talk about something unpredictable without going into detail. We don't have the goal of putting pressure. But it's important that Aya doesn't close herself off. Lauren agrees and takes the name she needs out of her notebook. She connects on the phone. After a few short beeps, a calm female voice is heard on the other end. Lauren briefly explains the situation. You can hear her express sympathy and willingness to help. They agree that she will come in the evening for an hour and a half to get to know the girl and determine whether there is a need for additional lessons. By Lauren says, Aya looks at her father. And this woman won't scold me. Stephen smiles tenderly. No, of course not. She has spent her entire life helping people like you who just need a heart-to-heart talk to help them cope with stress. She is not a police officer or an investigator. She is kind. Girl makes eye contact with Lauren, who has ended the conversation. Lauren confirms. She'll arrive at about 6 in the evening. First, we'll tell her everything. And then, if you want, you can talk to her alone. Aya slowly squeezes her fingers on the blanket. Okay, I don't mind. All the rest of the day passes in a somewhat uneasy silence. Stephen is distracted by small household chores. He fixes a cabinet door, checks the condition of the plumbing. Lauren goes out into the yard several times, sometimes to the store, sometimes to take out the trash, trying not to meet with a glance with curious passers-by. There was one moment when a man with an inquisitive face stopped at the fence, but Lauren hurried back into the house and slammed the door behind her. In the evening, when the twilight thickens outside the windows, there is a knock. Aya, who has settled down on the sofa, rises anxiously. Lauren goes to open the door. On the threshold is a short woman with a warm smile, about 40 years old, in a plaid skirt and a modest blouse. She is healthy, it seems. My name is Anna. I came to talk to the girl, if necessary. Can I come in? Lauren lets her in. Stephen, seeing the woman, stands up. Welcome. We hope for your sensitivity. Anna looks around, notices Aya, and slowly approaches, sitting down on a small poof opposite. The girl looks at her warily. The woman addresses her in a warm, low voice. Hello, Aya. I understand you've had a tough day. I just want to chat with you about anything. Is that okay? Aya shrugs, glancing at Lauren and Stephen. Anna notices the bandage and offers the child to move next to her so that it is more comfortable. After waiting for a cautious agreement, she quietly asks what the girl likes to read, what her favorite flower is. Aya answers briefly, but gradually relaxes. Anna does not raise direct questions about what happened, only briefly indicating that she is ready to listen if Aya wants. At some point, the girl, without noticing it, starts telling the story of how it all happened. She speaks quietly, as if trying to remember the smallest details. Anna does not interrupt, only occasionally throwing out short phrases of support. I understand. You were scared. You have nothing to apologize for. When Aya finishes, tears appear in her eyes. Anna carefully hands over a handkerchief. It was a terrible situation. You are a brave girl, if you could survive it. Lauren and Stephen watch from the sidelines, trying not to interfere with the process. It seems to them that Aya feels a little better when she has the opportunity to talk to a neutral, friendly person rather than her family. Anna takes the girl by the hand. It is important to remember, no one should use force without reason, and it is not your fault that someone behaved illegally. I hope you recover and become calm and joyful again. Aya nods. Although she remains sad, a spark of clarity appears in her gaze. Anna jumps up, turns to Lauren and Stephen. Let's agree that I'll drop by in a few days. I'll spend more time talking if necessary. But it seems the girl just needs to restore her faith that she's surrounded by people who want the best for her. Exchanging glances, Lauren and Stephen thank Anna. They walk her to the door, and she goes straight into the darkness, creeping onto the street. The house is quiet again, but this silence is a little different. More even, soft. Aya sits down on the sofa, tucking her legs under her. She is good. I was not afraid with her. Lauren, sitting down next to her, hugs her niece. We are glad that you feel a little better. Stephen sits down opposite and says in a calm voice, So, let's move on. We're here for you. No one will leave you, and we'll keep trying to get answers from the police. Aya closes her eyes, feeling a small relief in her heart, though not a final one. Everyone understands that the evening will again take them into the world of anxious thoughts. But it is already clear. The girl has found support. Relatives who are incapable of betraying her, and other people which will help you endure any injustice. On the next day, Lauren goes out into the yard early to stretch her legs and check her mailbox. The sky is still dim, the air is damp, and from across the street, she can hear the faint sound of a truck. Apparently, workers unloading something. Lauren opens a small metal box and pulls out a thin stack of envelopes. Among them, she notices an official one, bearing the county emblem. She enters the house and finds Stephen already putting water on the stove for tea. Aya is still dozing, curled up on the couch. Opening the envelope, Lauren glances at the lines. It seems we're being called in for a preliminary interview with the local prosecutor, she says quietly to her brother. It says here that they want to clarify some details of the incident before passing the case on. Stephen tenses up. They probably want to form a more accurate idea of what charges to bring against Ray Dunning. On the other hand, they may try to find reasons to soften the case. It is unclear. Lauren rereads the letter. It is noted here that the visit is scheduled for the day after tomorrow. We need to take all the documents we have, medical certificates, photographs of injuries, examination results. And Aya, apparently, will also have to be taken with us. It is specified there that the victims can call his for a personal dialogue with the authorized representative. Stephen shakes his head sadly. We will try to ease this stress for the girl, although it is obvious that she will have to remember the details again. And at this time, Aya wakes up, raises herself on her elbow, and looks at her family with curiosity. What happened? Are you going somewhere again? Lauren carefully puts the envelope aside. For now, only in a couple of days. We'll have to go to the person who decides how to punish the police for such actions. But that's not today, so you have time to rest. Aya silently tugs at the edge of the blanket. Will they invite me too? Stephen sits down next to me. Maybe yes, but we will be there. We will try not to leave you alone for a minute. Girl nods. She has become much quieter in recent days, sometimes looking away when talking about the police. Lauren notices this behavior and tries to induce at least a little calm in her niece. Now we'll have breakfast, and then, if you want, you can read or draw a little. I thought that walking and creativity would help to distract myself. Aya shrugs. It's probably worth a try. While Lauren prepares a modest breakfast, Stephen goes into the room to call Greg, the lawyer. The receiver gives short beeps for a while, then a voice is heard. I'm listening. Stephen tells about the official summons to the prosecutor and asks what action they should take. Greg replies, It's great news that the case has reached the prosecutor's office. It means it hasn't been lost in the internal investigations. I recommend taking all the original medical reports, hospital records, photographs, and any recorded statements if you have them. I could either go with you as your confidant. Stephen breathed a sigh of relief. Okay, we would appreciate it. I think we can immediately be asked about the girl's character at school, whether she had any previous problems. No matter how the officer tried to blacken her, the facts say that the child was an ordinary passerby. Greg says in a confident tone, That's right, I am ready to document your case. For my part, I will contact the district attorney representing the injured party. We will work together. Stephen ends the conversation and returns to the kitchen, where Lauren is already setting out cups and plates on the low table. Well, what did he say? She asks, pushing a plate of porridge towards Aya. He's coming with us, Stephen replies. He advised us to put everything in a folder. Looking at the official papers, the prosecutor will have no doubt that an innocent girl suffered. They are having breakfast without further ado. Aya occasionally brings her hand to the wound, checking to see if the bandage has come off. Lauren, noticing this, bends down. Don't touch too often. Just look, okay? I understand, the girl responds quietly. After food. Lauren pulls out the sheets and photographs that Greg recently took, carefully rearranges them, checking that everything is signed. Stephen takes a folder from the cabinet, where photocopies of paper certificates are already placed. There is also a business card of Dr. Escobar, who examined the girl at home. They carefully put everything in a single bag. Let the prosecutor see a solid evidence base, says Lauren, and we will prepare Aya for questions that might frighten or confuse her. Aya sits with his cheek propped up, as if trying to concentrate. After a while, he stands up. Can I still draw? I want to forget about this whole police thing for a minute. Stephen nods sympathetically. Sure, you can go to your room and get your sketchbook and pencils. I remember you had your favorite colors there. Girl goes into her small room. The others try to keep their conversations quiet so as not to disturb her peace. Soon, Lauren decides to call Sergeant Maria Soto to find out if there is any new information, whether they have already officially handed over the materials to the prosecutor's office tour, but no one picks up the phone, and Lauren leaves a short message. "We received a call. We will cooperate. Please let me know if you have any additional details." Innate lunchtime, Anna, the psychologist who spoke to Aya the day before, shows up. She was passing by and decided to pop in to see how the girl was feeling. Stephen invites her in. "Thank you very much for stopping by. Aya is in her room, drawing. Perhaps you can talk again, if she doesn't mind." Anna takes off her light cape with a kind smile. "I don't want to intrude. I just wanted to make sure she wasn't in a sudden decline. I thought it was important for her to talk." Lauren invites her into the living room and offers to sit down. But Anna, looking at her watch, says that she doesn't have much time. "I'm only here for a few minutes. If Aya wants to come out, I'll be happy to see her." Lauren knocks quietly on the girl's room. "Aya, Anna is here and wants to know how you're doing. Do you want to talk for a minute?" I heard Ida Week answer. A short time later, Aya opens the door and comes out with a small piece of paper. It shows a garden in which some silhouettes resemble people holding hands. Anna watches attentively. "What a lovely composition. It's clear that you love to draw, even if it's not easy for you right now." Aya shrugs. "I just thought it was nice when everyone was friendly." Anna bows her head softly. "Very good idea. Listen, does the wound still hurt a little?" Girl touches the bandage. "A little, but I apply ointment. They say it will go away faster." Anna smiles kindly. "I wanted to say, if you suddenly feel that anxiety is not letting you breathe deeply, tell your family about it. And if necessary, I am always ready to talk. It is important to feel support so as not to lose faith in people." Aya nods, hiding her gaze, but it is clear that she really finds it easier to hear these words. Anna, looking at her watch, says goodbye and promises to call in the next few days. Stephen and Lauren walk her to the door, thanking her for her concern. When the woman leaves, the house is full of disappears light silence. "It's good that she came," Lauren notes. "Maybe Aya will calm down, and tomorrow we'll probably go again for the ointment as Dr. Escobar recommended." Stephen looks at the cover of the document folder. "And don't forget about the visit to the prosecutor. We need to think about how we will protect Aya from unpleasant questions." "Greg promised to be there," Lauren reminds. "I hope he gets there on time." The rest Aya spends part of the day in her room. A couple of times she goes out to drink water and have a snack. Stephen gives her a small flower in a pot, which used to live on the windowsill and hardly attract attention. He seats the girl at the table, puts it modestly in front of her green plant, "so that you have something to water, to grow. I think this will lift your spirits." Aya strokes the sheets of paper with her finger in gratitude. Lauren smiles slightly, seeing that the girl has at least perked up a little. Maybe she really should take care of it. I've never seen her show interest in indoor plants. Stephen shrugs. Now is the time for her kindness and care to show, despite the worries she has experienced. The flower will not abandon her, will not hurt her, but will grow and strengthen her sense of confidence that life goes on. Evening approaches unnoticed. The calm sun pours outside the windows, the wind ripples in the treetops. Suddenly, there is a knock on the door. Lauren, startled, hurries to look through the peephole. Greg, a lawyer, appears on the threshold, looking tired but businesslike. "Good evening. Sorry for not calling. I have news. Can I come in?" Stephen points him towards the living room. "Sure, come in. We're listening to you." Greg places a neat case on the floor and opens it, taking out a couple of sheets of paper. "I have learned that the DA is preparing an indictment against Ray Dunning based on charges of abuse of office and causing bodily harm to a minor. You will be called to testify soon." Lauren looks at Stephen. "That is, it will involve not only internal discipline, but also legal proceedings?" "Yes," Greg confirms. "And the prosecutor is determined. I heard that Captain Riley did not hide the facts. Apparently, the department is trying to escape the scandal by proving that they do not cover up for their own." Stephen squeezes Lauren's hand. "Thank God. Justice is not so inaccessible, although there are still many interrogations and formalities to be completed. Greg lays out the papers. This is just the beginning. I wanted to give you an idea of how the hearing will go. First, the prosecutor will ask questions, then Dunning's defense will present its arguments. Rumor has it that he has hired a pretty tough lawyer who might try to turn the whole thing around. You upside down and say that the girl was behaving provocatively. We must not underestimate the danger of such tactics, but the facts are on our side. Lauren notes, "We warned Aya that she would have to answer questions, but I hope they won't put too much pressure on the child." Greg raises his eyebrows. Officially, there are restrictions so as not to traumatize minors once again. But in practice, lawyers ask different questions. That's why I want to prepare her to help formulate the answers correctly. Not to lie, of course, but to be able to speak firmly and calmly about what happened without confusion. Stephen swallows the lump in his throat. I understand. She's still a child. It's hard for her to remember. Greg softens his voice. I will try to warn the prosecutor to create the most lenient conditions. Just be prepared that the hearing may not be easy. Dunning, as far as I know, is not going to admit guilt entirely and may accuse the child of provocation. Lauren evilly presses her lips. What a disgrace. I hope no one covers up for this impudent fellow. Greg shakes his head. The court will decide. But we must not only rely on emotions, but provide clear evidence, hospital records, and testimonies. The rest is in the hands of the law and the jury, if it comes to them. For a few minutes, they discuss the details. Aya quietly comes out of her room and, seeing Greg, listens in, but does not intervene in the conversation. Stephen, noticing the girl, waves to her, inviting her to come over. Greg smiles softly at the sight of the victim. Hi, Aya. Glad to see you're holding up. How are you feeling? Better, thank you. She responds modestly. Greg tries to speak quietly. I promise I will do my best so that you are no longer afraid of people and questions. But soon you will have to tell about the incident in front of important people. Can you do it? Aya looks at her father, then at Greg. I can, if my dad and aunt are with me. Lauren puts her hand on her shoulder. We will be there, of course. Greg collects the papers back into the case. Okay, then I won't detain you any longer. I'll contact you again tomorrow. We'll discuss once and for all how the meeting with the prosecutor will go. In addition, there may be police witnesses there, but I don't think Sergeant Maria Soto will take Dunning's side. She sees the injustice too. Stephen extends his hand to him. Thank you. We're holding on. Until next time. Greg leaves. The meeting, though frightening for Lauren and Stephen, leaves behind a slight feeling that the bosses are not going to ignore their pain. There is confidence that, given the facts, Dunning will get what he deserves. But a final decision is still a long way off. Aya looks out the window where the fading light of sunset paints the sky in lilac tones. I don't want to see anyone from the police anymore, but if I have to, I'll go. Lauren sits down next to me. You will only have to confirm the truth. The lawyer and the prosecutor will take care of all the other details, and we will accompany you every moment. Stephen hugs his daughter. The main thing is to save your strength. We won't let anyone hurt you. The three of them are sitting in the living room, feeling in their hearts how a small family is preparing for big changes. It may be a difficult fight, but they are not alone because there are people who understand what justice is.